They predicted the Apple Vision Pro. There's an old Simpsons episode where people are walking around with those goggles and they're falling into manholes, and now you're seeing people out there in the street swiping things and moving away and wearing these goggles on the street.
Did The Simpsons predict the devastating LA wildfires of 2025? Fans can't stop talking about the eerie similarities between the show's episodes and real events. Could this be another uncanny moment of Simpsons-style foresight? The shocking truth behind Simpsons' prophecies. When Donald Trump was elected President of the United States in 2016, the world was shocked, but perhaps no one more than the Simpsons fans. You see, the show had already predicted this scenario 16 years earlier in a 2000 episode, Bart to the Future. In this episode, Lisa becomes the president and refers to inheriting quite a budget crunch from President Trump. At the time, this line was intended as a throwaway joke. Trump, after all, was a business tycoon and a reality TV star, not someone you'd associate with serious political ambitions. But when Trump announced his candidacy and won the election, this Simpsons moment went viral. People couldn't believe that the show had called it so accurately. Was it a lucky guess, or were the writers peering into a crystal ball? The truth is a bit less magical. In interviews, the writers explained that Trump's name was chosen because it symbolized something exaggerated and absurd. Even in the late 1990s, Trump had flirted with the idea of running for president, and his larger-than-life persona made him the perfect candidate for satire. In hindsight, the writer's choice seemed less like a wild prediction and more like a reflection of cultural trends that eventually materialized. One of the most eerie parallels between The Simpsons and real life comes from the 1993 episode Marge in Chains. In this episode, Springfield is struck by the Osaka flu, which spreads after residents ordered juicers from Japan. What starts as a humorous commentary on consumer culture quickly turns into chaos, with sick townsfolk and panicked mobs adding to the hilarity. Fast forward to 2020, and the world was grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. The similarities between the fictional Osaka flu and real-life events were uncanny enough to get fans buzzing. To make things even stranger, the episode includes a subplot involving a swarm of killer bees, eerily similar to the murder hornets reported during the same period. Social media was flooded with comparisons, with people wondering if The Simpsons had done it again. But here's the thing, pandemics aren't a new concept. The writers likely drew inspiration from historical events like the flu or SARS outbreaks, both of which were significant health crises. The inclusion of the killer bees? Well, probably just a comedic exaggeration, though it coincidentally lined up with a real-world headline decades later. The truth is, these coincidences are fascinating, but they don't necessarily mean the show has prophetic powers. In addition, The Simpsons has ventured into the realm of technology by making forecasts that have revealed themselves to be surprisingly correct. Consider, for example, the episode Lisa's Wedding from the year 1995. This episode takes place in the future and depicts Lisa's fiancé making a call by speaking into a smartwatch through the interface. By that point in time, the concept of technology that could be worn was still firmly rooted in the realm of science fiction. However, by the time we reached the 2010s, smartwatches such as the Apple Watch had already materialized into the market. Another noteworthy example may be found in the episode Lisa on Ice from the year 1994. This episode shows an early version of autocorrect. Beat Up Martin is written by a character on a portable device in the episode. However, the device's autocorrect features transforms it into Eat Up Martha. Does this sound familiar to you? In the modern era, autocorrect errors have become a common occurrence, and this image seems to be a humorously prophetic representation of that reality. So, how exactly does The Simpsons ace these forecasts about technology? Well, simply put, it is an extrapolation. It is not magic. The writers of the show have a keen awareness of developing concepts and trends in the industry. As an illustration, conversations around voice communication with wearable technology were already taking place in the realm of technology long before the Apple Watch was introduced. The authors were able to build scenarios that were not only futuristic, but also conceivable, and in some instances, they were even frighteningly true. This was accomplished by infusing these principles into their stories. People on the internet go absolutely crazy if a Simpsons prediction turns out to be accurate. The internet is ablaze with memes. Fans are searching through past episodes for further examples, and news agencies are joining in on the frenzy with titles such as, "Did the Simpsons predict the future again?" It has almost reached the point where it is considered a cultural expectation that the show will predict the next major event. There is something more profound about the human condition that is reflected in the attraction with The Simpsons as a prophetic show. Because they enable us to make sense of the world, patterns and relationships are fascinating to us. Consequently, when an episode of The Simpsons coincides with a real-world occurrence, it leaves a huge impression, even if it is really a coincidence. This, however, does not convince everyone. The fact that the show has been shown for more than 30 years and has more than 700 episodes is something that skeptics point out. Because there is so much content, it is statistically possible that some of the tales will overlap with actual events that have occurred in the world. To put it another way, it is not so much a prophecy as it is the law of great numbers coming into play. Are the Simpsons just lucky, or are they predicting the future? How the Simpsons mastered satire to mirror the future. The real secret of the Simpsons' success isn't fortune-telling, it's smart writing. The show's creators and writers are some of the brightest minds in comedy, and their process is grounded in observation and satire. By paying close attention to societal trends, political developments, and technological advancements, they create storylines that resonate with audiences. For example, the Trump presidency joke wasn't a prediction. It was an exaggeration of existing trends in celebrity culture and politics. Similarly, the tech predictions that are already being discussed in scientific or academic circles. The writers take these ideas and give them a humorous twist, creating a world that feels both absurd and strangely familiar. There is also a significant contribution made by the fact that the writing team works together. The writers present their ideas, discuss the merits of those ideas, and then refine those ideas into scripts that are witty, smart, and frequently thought-provoking. With this method, the show is able to maintain its relevance despite the fact that the world around it is always evolving. When it comes down to it, The Simpsons is not about making predictions about the future. Rather, it is about reflecting the present state of affairs. The ability of the show to take real-world problems and exaggerate them to the point that they are both funny and thought-provoking is the source of the show's greatness. The fact that these exaggerations are sometimes realized is merely one factor that contributes to the show's air of mystery. However, it is essential to keep in mind that these predictions are frequently the result of coincidences and are not evidence of having supernatural foresight. The writer's capacity to delve into the zeitgeist and imagine where current trends might lead is demonstrated by these works, which are a monument itself. Despite the fact that it is entertaining to be amazed by how accurate they are, the true charm of The Simpsons rests in its humor, its heart, and its capacity to provoke us to think about the world in new ways. So, the next time you hear someone say, "The Simpsons predicted the future," take it with a grain of salt. It's not magic, it's just really good satire. But the real surprise comes when we shift from Bart's wild ride to Springfield's fiery disaster. The 2007 episode, Little Big Girl. The primary storyline of Little Big Girl revolves around Bart Simpson and his never-ending quest to avoid responsibility. After saving Springfield from a potential disaster, admittedly one he accidentally started, Bart is rewarded with a driver's license, despite being only 10 years old. Well, this newfound freedom takes him on a wild ride, literally and figuratively, where he encounters adventure, independence, and even a quickie Vegas-style marriage to a girl named Darcy. Meanwhile, Lisa embarks on a project to research her family's ancestry. To her dismay, she discovers that her lineage isn't as illustrious as she hoped, being largely comprised of what she perceives as average nobodies. In classic Lisa fashion, she decides to rewrite history and fabricate an identity, claiming that her family is part Native American. This revelation elevates her social status and earns her accolades until the truth comes out. While these two plots take center stage, there's a smaller subplot involving Springfield's struggles with a wildfire. Although it plays a relatively minor role in the episode, this storyline has captured attention over the years for its perceived connection to real-world events. The wildfire subplot begins innocently enough, with Springfield experiencing its typical unpredictable weather patterns. A long drought leaves the town dry and vulnerable, setting the stage for a disaster. When the fire starts, thanks to Homer's unusual antics, it quickly spirals out of control, consuming vast swaths of land around Springfield. The wildfire scenes are classic Simpsons humor, blending absurdity with dark undertones. Homer, in his attempts to douse the flames, inadvertently makes things worse. For example, he throws a barrel of what he thinks is water into the fire, only for it to explode because it is full of gasoline. These moments of slapstick comedy are balanced with moments of genuine tension as the fire spreads and the residents of Springfield scramble to protect their homes and lives. The fire itself is depicted as an unstoppable force of nature. It shows consuming trees, buildings, and even parts of the Simpsons family's iconic home. The episode uses humor to convey the scale of the disaster, like when Chief Wiggum tries to put out the fire with a single garden hose, or when Moe's Tavern miraculously survives the flames because it's too soaked in alcohol to burn. Despite the humor, the wildfire subplot has an undercurrent of seriousness. It highlights the vulnerability of the environment and the community's underpreparedness for such disasters. Though it's played for laughs, there's an impact warning about the dangers of neglecting environmental issues, a theme that feels even more relevant today. The wildfire scenes in Little Big Girl are visually striking. The animators use a palette of reds, oranges, and yellows to depict the flames, creating an ominous atmosphere that contrasts with the otherwise bright and colorful world of Springfield. The fire's spread is shown in sweeping shots, emphasizing its relentless nature. Characters are often silhouetted against the glow of the flames, adding a dramatic touch to the visuals. From a thematic perspective, the wildfire subplot ties into broader ideas of chaos and consequence, reoccurring themes in The Simpsons. Fires, like many of the disasters depicted in the show, often symbolize the fallout of human folly. Homer's carelessness, in this case, serves as a catalyst for the fire, highlighting how small, thoughtless actions can lead to large-scale consequences. Interestingly, the episode also touches on community resilience in the face of disaster. While much of the response is comedically inept, there is a sense of collective effort as Springfield's residents band together to combat the flames. This mirrors real-life responses to wildfires, where communities often come together to support one another, even in the most challenging of circumstances. Another thematic element is the tension between nature and human development. The fire is shown devouring both natural landscapes and human structures, underscoring the delicate balance between the two. While the episode doesn't delve deeply into environmental commentary, it hints at the consequences of urban expansion and environmental neglect, issues that are increasingly relevant in today's world. When people revisit Little Big Girl in the context of modern wildfires, it's easy to see why it resonates. The episode, though exaggerated and humorous, captures many of the dynamics we see in real-world wildfire scenarios, drought conditions, the rapid spread of flames, and the challenges of coordinating a response. It also reflects a growing awareness of environmental vulnerabilities and the role human behavior plays in exacerbating natural disasters. In recent years, for instance, California and other regions around the world have been confronted with wildfires that have broken records. These fires have been caused by a mix of factors, including climate change, poor land management, and urban expansion. Similar to the events that were presented in this episode, these fires have caused a tremendous amount of destroyed property. In spite of the fact that The Simpsons did not predict these occurrences, the issues that it portrayed feel hauntingly predictive, particularly in light of our expanding understanding of the threats that are associated with climate change. The ability of The Simpsons to approach serious subjects with humor and intelligence is one of the reasons why the show continues to achieve such widespread popularity. A great illustration of this equilibrium can be found in the wildfire subplot that appears in Little Big Girl. At first glance, it appears to be a humorous exaggeration of many catastrophic scenarios, complete with a variety of oddities and gags. On the other hand, underlying the comedy lurks an acknowledgement of the difficulties that exist in the real world, a recognition of the precarious nature of both human society and the natural community. Due to the show's dual nature, it has a somewhat long shelf life. Not only does it enable us to laugh at our own shortcomings, but it also inspires us to engage in critical thinking about the world that surrounds us. The episode encourages us to consider how our actions contribute to broader problems and what we can do to help solve those problems. Whether it's Homer spreading gasoline on a fire or the townspeople trying to preserve their homes, the story prompts us to think about how and what we can do to tackle these problems. What if The Simpsons predicted 2025's wildfires? The uncanny resemblance proves art often mirrors life. The 2025 Los Angeles wildfires. The summer of 2025 brought unprecedented challenges to Los Angeles as wildfires swept through the region, leaving devastation in their wake. It was a season defined by destruction, resilience, and a stark reminder of the risks posed by climate change and urban expansion. The wildfires that struck Los Angeles that year were not only among the most destructive in California's history, but also a turning point in how communities, governments, and environmentalists approached wildfire prevention and response. The 2025 wildfires began in early July, sparked by a series of lightning strikes during an intense dry storm that passed through the region. For months prior to this, Los Angeles County had endured record-breaking heat waves and unusually low rainfall, conditions that left the area parched and primed for disaster. The combination of extreme heat and prolonged drought created a tinderbox where even the smallest spark could unleash chaos. The first significant fire ignited in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, where dense vegetation and strong winds provided the perfect conditions for rapid spread. Within days, what started as a localized blaze had grown into a massive wildfire, forcing nearby communities to evacuate. The flames raced downhill, threatening residential areas and prompting widespread panic. By mid-July, additional fires had erupted across the region, many caused by human activity. Campfires left unattended, sparks from equipment, and even arson were all contributing factors. These smaller fires merged into a larger inferno, forming what experts referred to as a megafire. The flames stretched across Los Angeles County, reaching densely populated areas like Malibu and parts of the San Fernando Valley. The speed of the fire spread left many residents with little time to escape, and emergency services were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disaster. The situation peaked in late July, as multiple evacuation orders were issued simultaneously. Families fled their homes, unsure if they would have anything to return to. Firefighters worked tirelessly, battling flames that leapt across highways and consumed entire neighborhoods. Finally, by mid-August, cooler temperatures and a coordinating firefighting effort helped bring the situation under control. But the damage had already been done. The aftermath of the 2025 Los Angeles wildfires revealed the extent of the devastation. Entire communities were unrecognizable, reduced to ash and rubble. The fires had consumed not only homes and businesses, but also vast tracts of natural landscapes, leaving a scarred and barren terrain in their wake. The human cost of the disaster, too, was profound. Dozens of lives were lost, including residents who were unable to evacuate in time, and firefighters who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thousands were left injured or displaced, their lives uprooted by the flames. The psychological toll on survivors was immense, as they grappled with the loss of loved ones, homes, and a sense of security. Economically, the fires were catastrophic. The cost of rebuilding homes, businesses, and infrastructure ran into the tens of billions of dollars. Insurance claims soared, and many residents faced financial ruin, as not all properties were adequately covered. The fires also disrupted daily life across the region, with road closures, air quality warnings, and power outages affecting millions. The environmental impact was equally severe. Thousands of acres of forest and wildlife habitats were destroyed, displacing countless animals and disrupting ecosystems. The fires released massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, exacerbating the very climate conditions that made them so destructive in the first place. The 2025 wildfires were not an isolated incident, but the result of a combination of long-term and immediate factors that created the perfect storm for the disaster. One of the most significant contributors was climate change. Rising global temperatures had led to hotter and drier conditions in California, making wildfires more frequent and intense. The prolonged drought that preceded the fires was a direct result of shifting weather patterns, with less rainfall and snowpack to replenish the state's water supply. As a result, vegetation across Los Angeles County had become dry and highly flammable, providing ample fuel for the fires. Urban development also played a critical role. Los Angeles has been characterized by its sprawling growth, with residential and commercial areas expanding into regions that were once natural habitats. These areas, known as the wildland-urban interface, are particularly vulnerable to wildfires. Homes and businesses built near forests and grasslands are at a higher risk, as fires can spread quickly from natural landscapes to human structures. Fire management policies and practices also came under scrutiny in the wake of the 2025 wildfires. For decades, California had focused on fire suppression, prioritizing the immediate extinguishing of fires over long-term prevention measures. This approach allowed dry vegetation to accumulate, creating a buildup of fuel that made fires harder to control when they did occur. While there had been efforts in recent years to implement controlled burns and other preventative measures, they had not been implemented on a scale large enough to address the growing risk. The rapid spread of the fires was further fueled by the infamous Santa Ana winds, which are a reoccurring feature of Southern California's climate. These strong, dry winds fanned the flames, making them nearly impossible to contain and pushing them into urban areas faster than firefighters could respond. When comparing the 2007 episode to the 2025 wildfires, it's easy to see why people draw connections. For starters, both feature wildfires that start in dry, forested areas and spread quickly due to the windy conditions. This is a well-documented pattern in real-world fire behavior, particularly in Southern California, where the Santa Ana winds can turn a small spark into a massive inferno. The visual elements also overlap in a way that feels uncanny. The orange skies and ash-filled air depicted in The Simpsons are almost identical to the apocalyptic scenes from Los Angeles in 2025. Both highlight the terrifying beauty of wildfire imagery, something that resonates deeply with anyone who has experienced or witnessed such events. Even the chaotic and disorganized response in Springfield bears some resemblance to the challenges faced by firefighting crews in 2025. While the comedic tone of the show exaggerates the incompetence of Springfield's residents, real-life wildfires often strain emergency services and reveal gaps in preparedness. Despite these similarities, there are significant differences between the fictional wildfire in Little Big Girl and the real-life events of Los Angeles. One major distinction lies in the causes. In the episode, the fire seems to be the result of accidental human choices and Homer's characteristic clumsiness. In contrast, the 2025 wildfires were driven by a combination of natural and human-made factors, including climate change, urban sprawl, and inadequate land management. The scale of the disaster is another major difference. The Springfield fire, while dramatic, is confined to the town and its immediate surroundings. The 2025 wildfires, however, stretched across multiple counties, consuming over 1 million acres and causing billions of dollars in damage. The real-world fires also had a far greater human toll, with numerous lives lost and entire communities displaced. Furthermore, the episode's resolution is lighthearted and quick. Springfield's fire is extinguished by a comical twist or a convenient plot device. In reality, the 2025 wildfires required weeks of coordinated effort from thousands of firefighters, aerial crews, and volunteers. The recovery process stretched on for years, leaving scars, both literal and metaphorical, on the affected areas. Did The Simpsons really predict the 2025 wildfires? Here's where the conversation gets interesting. Did The Simpsons actually predict the 2025 wildfires? Or is it just another example of fans connecting dots where none exist? First, it's important to recognize that wildfires are not a new phenomenon. California, and Los Angeles in particular, has a long history of destructive fires. The conditions that led to the 2025 wildfires, drought, high winds, and dry vegetation, are well-documented risks that have existed for decades. When the writers of The Simpsons crafted their wildfire subplot in 2007, they were likely drawing from the existing knowledge rather than making a prediction about the future. The similarities in visual elements, such as the orange skies and smoky air, can also be explained by the fact that these are universal features of wildfires. Any depiction of a wildfire, whether fictional or real, is likely to include these details because they are so intrinsically tied to the phenomenon. The capacity of The Simpsons to capture the essence of real-world events in a way that emotionally resonates with people is what gives the show a prophetic quality. It is possible that the wildfire subplot in the Little Big Girl episode was not intended to be a prediction, yet it did manage to tap into the universal concerns and difficulties that are linked with wildfires. These difficulties only became more pronounced by the year 2025. The fact that people consider The Simpsons to be a prophetic show offers insight into a more widespread cultural phenomena. The drive to discover patterns and relationships is intrinsic to the human species, even when it is possible that these things do not exist. When something that happens in the real world coincides with something that happens in fiction, it has a tremendous impact, even if it's simply a coincidence. The similarities between the flames that occurred in 2025 and Little Big Girl bring to light the widespread concern that we all share regarding the effects of climate change and natural disasters. Additionally, they highlight the ability of storytelling to both reflect and amplify the concerns that are being raised. A fictional event that felt credible enough to mimic real-life events was created by The Simpsons through the use of relevant themes that were woven into the plot of the show. In the end, the similarities between The Simpsons and the wildfires that occurred in 2025 divulge more information about ourselves than they do about the show itself. They bring to light our preoccupation with the concept that fiction can in some way predict reality, and they serve as a reminder of the significant influence that art and storytelling can have on the way in which we comprehend the world. Despite the fact that Little Big Girl was never meant to be a prediction, it was successful in expressing the intricate interaction that exists between mankind and the natural environment. This relationship is still riddled with difficulties and repercussions. According to this interpretation, the incident does not function as a prophecy, but rather as a mirror, reflecting the vulnerabilities and resiliency that are inherent in the human experience. As we move forward, it is possible that the true lesson is not whether or not The Simpsons foretold the future, but rather how we react to the issues that it so astutely satirized. After all, although fiction might not be able to alter the truth, it has the power to motivate us to think, take action, and get ready for whatever occurs in the future. The public's response to the supposed forecast showed a wide range of emotions, ranging from complete and utter belief to a cautious skepticism. Numerous viewers interpreted the similarities as another evidence that The Simpsons have an extraordinary ability to predict the future. The wildfire prediction was not merely a coincidence for these believers. Rather, it was a part of a long line of precise projections, which included everything from the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency to the development of smartwatches. Skeptics, on the other hand, were quick to point out the problematic aspects of this story. In their defense, they said that wildfires are a typical occurrence in the state of California, and that the authors of The Simpsons were merely expressing environmental concerns that are fairly well recognized. Other people stressed the importance of selective memory, pointing out that the show has produced more than 700 episodes, which means that it is statistically likely that some of the events will correspond to actual events that have occurred in the real world. After that, there were those individuals who discovered that they were situated in the middle. Despite the fact that these individuals enjoyed the enjoyment and fascination of relating The Simpsons to real-life situations, they refrained from attaching any predictive skills to the show. These individuals believed that the prediction that spread like wildfire was less about true foresight and more about the cultural phenomenon that surrounded The Simpsons. The wildfires themselves became a secondary focus for many people, which is an interesting development. The preoccupation with The Simpsons frequently had the effect of overshadowing the damage that occurred in Los Angeles, including the loss of lives and the destruction of so many homes. Even in the face of significant events that are taking on in the real world, pop culture has the ability to influence public discourse, as seen by this shift in focus. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering The Simpsons prediction, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more intriguing content like this. See you next time.